account directors. We have to come up with a game plan and just run with it of how we want to break down the main company, the DBA, all the stuff we talked about the other day. If we want to use something like D&B, Open Corporate, Clearbit, some kind of standardization tool, and then how we want that to work with someone new joining. At what point are they introduced to the other people from their company? How much or how little information are we telling them about the other people in that company? Before they've like actually onboarded and been approved or whatever.
I think we have to define what we're trying to do first. I think, at least for me, like what do we specifically want to come out the other end with?
Yeah, there's two things in play. There's how do we make this so fast and simple for whoever's signing up, right? That there's nothing standing in their way, versus how much falls on the back end, our plate of making sure that
Cleaning up
people
and
are
organizing and
cleaning up,
aligning.
people are aligned.
So taking a step back from that, what information do we think we want? What is wrong before we bring in all of the APIs and stuff like that? What do we want to change about what we have? Like very specifically, like from the buyer side of the person who's joining, what are the issues they're having?
Look at signups is probably the only thing I've noticed the most of, and it's almost always because people are like, well, I didn't get a password, or
So I think our initiatives there externally is we want to make the UI clear, like what are we trying to separate? And I think that flow was very clear on the original Bryzos because it changed the page. So is it a UI thing where we just actually have like information and then it carriages over to the next page? It's like a 2-page sign up thing where it's like about your company, about your location, so they know that the page is turned. But I think there was an error in our workflow when we did that, which is we were trying to do it in real time as they were typing and we're doing this filtering drop down. I think a better way to do that, so because I think we're gonna have to compromise a little bit if we want it to work well, in my opinion, which is I think they're gonna enter their information and then hit submit, and then I think we ping Google merchants or whatever and say, here, your company didn't come up. Is it one of these? And that's so quick and fast. And most of them are going to be fine. So is there a different API like Google or D&B is not necessarily the answer either, because a lot of these smaller companies, you know, they might not have a D&B. So I think that D&B is probably, now with all this AI, I mean, the ability to triangulate a company is so fast now and easy. So we have a workflow which is it can first comb our database,
Right.
and then it can go to the third party.
Right.
But there's a logic that says, if found here, don't go there,
Okay.
right? Because the best user experience is, if found here, don't go any further.
So I think what we should do is that we should not hit the external service, you know, of course hit our database. But if we don't find it, then we go to Google. But we don't do the external search while they are typing. So rather we should do that, like let them enter their name. We should do like an auto kind of search from our database, and if it's not, if they don't find it, then enable that button saying that okay, now you can go and find your company.
right. And you're saying using all three of those databases all kind of one
Basically
right
in that
after the
order.
other, so that you can pretty much be found like no matter what, hopefully,
Yeah, hopefully, and if they're
by the time you get to the third,
Right.
like the Google API or
right, because that could come on with the app, kind of like our products search, because it wouldn't be a big file. I mean, it'd be just a stand, like maybe it would be, but it wouldn't be dynamic.
Okay.
It'd be super fast, and then we could go to third party but I think we could get a pretty extensive list. I mean, we have to pay for it, but if it.
And at what point, let's just focus on pinging our database first. At what point will that user start to see results? And the reason I ask is because of fraudulent, someone who's trying to like, oh, let me see, if they start seeing like, we're just going to tell them the companies that are on here, if it's someone who's trying to steal or, get customers that we have on here, they could just start kind of typing in like, let's start with A, then B. So.
Okay, so are we agreeing that third party, our database, do them at the same time, I mean, the drop down is both merged.
Correct.
And I think that we should find enough data out there, even if we're going to like the federal, like doing reverse EIN lookup type stuff, like just paying for something that's, you know, I think it's worth paying for something that's almost a little expensive just so that onboard is like super slick. Okay, so third party, merge it with our data, try and make it as relevant as possible to reduce redundancy.
Yeah.
And if nothing comes up in that search, are they just allowed to like type in whatever company they want and move to the next
I
field?
think so. I mean, it should be safe to assume that they're not going to have someone else there. I mean, it's probably a one-person show. I mean, if they're not coming up anywhere,
Mm-hmm.
yeah.
Might be doing it out of their garage or something.
They could be out of the garage. They could be doing many things. I mean, there's obviously to what extent does that, okay, so let's assume that we've solved that. How do we get to the DBA versus the, you know, the kind of the legal entity name or whatever they
I think we've already solved for that with the prompting at checkout.
Okay.
And I think they can both live in like a settings where they could go look at like what the hell did I put for that field?
Mm-hmm.
Or it lives in the top PO or both or whatever, but I think prompting it at that time makes the most sense logically for when they'll think about it and put thought into how to fill that out properly. And then it can live somewhere that they could verify what they put in there in the future state and or update.
Well, this is a little bit going down the same path we did before, which was, so long as someone wasn't having to create a new company, the original sign-on was really easy.
Yeah.
I mean, it worked. It had the intended, you didn't get a lot of duplicate companies. I mean, way back, you know, original Bryzos, like this worked, so long as there wasn't someone who had to set up a new company, right? Which was, you know, it was not that much. It happened, but it wasn't like all the time. The reason it feels all the time is because that's when you had to deal with it,
Mm-hmm.
you know. But a lot of companies came in, found their company, everyone was signed up under the same company name, and it worked. So this is a better version of it, I think. I don't know how to, I think sending an email would be amazing, but also it would require a lot of time to think through it. And I think we have just as good of a solution just sticking with right where we are and just kind of making the back end better.
No, I think one way we could do it is just have the one field there because that's going to account for 90+% of users. We're not going to have a separate DBA. We can have in place when you go to check out, you can put in what you want how to be invoiced or whatever. It can also be like an email that comes a day later after they sign up to say, you know, do you have separate names? And if you do, go to your settings, show them in the email how to do it. They just click a button.
Mm-hmm.
And if they don't, they just delete the email and don't worry about it. But you're kind of giving them steps or ways that they can achieve that, but not at sign up.
I don't know. I mean, we'll find out. But I think it'll make sense when someone gets to a checkout and they can inline right there and they're like, oh, I did this wrong.
Yeah.
That's when they can be like, and we can have both there.
Right.
Or if they're like, no, we probably don't want both there because I think what's
I agree.
confusing is having both
yes,
in
I
view
agree.
is what's confusing.
Yeah.
Okay, where are we? Invoicing, yes. Redundant signups, legal entity. We feel like we've solved by having at sign up.
Yeah, because my first thought was like email verification, which I know there's services out there that do that, but they're not always accurate.
Right.
There are viable emails that people use, and for whatever reason, that service recognizes it as invalid.
Yeah.
We don't want that to happen.
That's the other thing.
It's not reliable. No.
It's not reliable.
No.
How unreliable is it? Or how reliable is it?
I don't know I can't give you a figure, but it's not like 100% reliable.
Is it 90%?
No, I think so. It's like more like 50-50. It depends on the type of internet or VPN that people are using.
Like I wouldn't get on an airplane. 50% of this crashes. I got the next one. I think that with more, as marketing continues and things sort of are continuing to grow, it's like how long do we have to be sensitive to the fact that people want to just dip a toe in? I think the place to start, because I don't think we're gonna solve this in the next like minute. I think the place to start would be, let's flag manual entries. I think that catches a lot of it. Because I think fraudulent people generally don't sort of just like, they're not like,
Assume the identity of a big
yeah.
name
And if we
company.
have some sort of language in there, be like, oh, cool, you're with that company. Well, after you
Right.
sign up, we'll let your coworkers know. Things like that are just enough to have them go somewhere else.
Mhm.
So invoicing the correct company. Okay, redundant signups. Having the correct legal entity parent company relationships. Fraudulent signups. The kind of manual adjustments we talked about, which is you gotta go in later and change a company. I think that's a ripple effect of redundance and fraudulence and stuff like that.
Was that internal or external?
Internal.
Or both? Yeah.
And then manual approval. And I think the manual approval, we have to just draw a line in the sand and say anyone who's before it is cool. Anyone based on flags and stuff, like there's going to be some. I think that'll rise up as we're sort of developing. It's like we just have to say the third person joined this company, and yeah, sure. All right, sorry, that was a little pushy, but we had to get through a stuff. We had a couple hundred decisions.
But we did it. We came to some final conclusions. So that's good. I could not stop laughing about NASDAQ.